No, but it's better. The sheets are better because you don't need to look for the letters. The Shema. Okay. All right. So we're good. Everybody has.
I'm gonna explain. I'm gonna The broadcast is good? Yeah?
We're live.
Great.
Just that. It's there for you tomorrow.
Yeah. Wait 1 second.
Everybody has
Okay. Now you want me to call my siblings?
Are they speaking right now?
Audio.
They're speaking right now?
No? So wait for when they want to speak. I don't know if they're going to want to speak altogether.
Check with them.
I should check with them? The Zoom is live, right? The Zoom is live?
Everything's right. Zoom, everything. We just want to make sure.
Thank you all so much for coming. Our rabbi is here with us. Rabbi Eitan. Rabbi Eitan Ben David. We're getting there.
Good. It's a real privilege to be here with the whole family, and it's hard to believe that a year has passed since we were here last. David and I were talking in the car how fast the year goes, and sometimes what makes it hard to lose a parent, to lose a sister, to lose a grandparent, in-laws, cousins, is not just losing the person, but also losing the potential, losing the moments that you were going to share, losing the stories you were going to share together. Being together for that simcha, being together as a family for Chagim, and that's what makes the year of Avilut very, very hard. Thinking about all the things that could have been. And so we're back here a year later, and a year to reflect, to mourn, and also to remember, to internalize everything that Netty stood for. Where do I put this? We're right here. This is getting serious. Okay, can you hear better now? Good. And so we're here to remember, to reflect, to come together and to be together. Friends, family, from here in Israel and even from abroad. And so we're going to start with a few Pirkei Tehillim. And then we'll continue with sharing some thoughts and reflections, with Dvar Torah as well. I do just want to make mention and acknowledge the close family members, Tamar and Ayala, Danny and Avi, who are on Zoom, and Ken, who is able to come in, and Michelle, who's also on Zoom as well. So hello from wherever you are in the world. We're thinking about you, and we're holding you tight, even though you're seeing us through Zoom. It's important to be together at these moments. So we're going to start with some Pirkei Tehillim. Everyone has the sheets in front of them. Tehillim Perek Lamed Gimel. We'll say these together, not responsibly, but together. We'll go through them together. And then for the Otiyot Neshama, we'll recite Netty's name in Hebrew, Nacha Devora, so that we'll give it out to different family members to recite each one. So we'll start with Tehillim Perek Lamed Gimel. We'll say this together. Ranenu tzadikim b'Adonai la'ishaim navati la hodu l'Adonai b'chinor b'nei v'lasor zamir lo shir lo shechadash etilu nagin b'tshura כי אשר דבר אדוני בכל מעשהו באמונה, אוהב צדקה ומשפט חסד אדוני מלאה הארץ, בדבר אדוני שמיים נעשו ברח פיו כל צבאם, כונס כנן מהים נותן באוצרות תהמות, יראו מאדוני כל הארץ, ממנו יגרו כל יושבי תבל, כי הוא אמר ויהי הוא ציווה ויעמוד, אדוני הפר עצת גויים, הני מחשבות עמים, אתה אדוני לעולם תעמוד מחשבו ליבו לדור ודור, אשר הגוי אשר אדוני אלוהיו העם בחר לנחללו, משמיים הביט אדוני רע כל בני האדם, ממכון שבטו השקיח אל כל יושבי הארץ, היוצר יחד ליבם, המבין אל כל מעשה, אמן המלך נשב ברוב חיל, גיבור לא ינצל ברוב כוח, שקר הסוס לתשועה, וברוב חיל לא ימלט, הנה אין אדוני אלי רעיו, לם יחלים לחסתו, להציל מבא נפשם ולחיותם ברעב, נפשנו חיגת על אדוני, עזרנו ומגננו, כי בו ישמח ליבנו, כי בשם קודשו בטחנו יהי, חסדך אדוני אלינו כאשר ייחלנו לך. תהילים פרק ט"ז. מכתם לדוד, שומרני אל כי חסיתי בך, אמרתי לאדוני, אדוני, אתה טובתי בל עליך, לקדושים אשר בארץ המה, ועדרי כל חפצי בם, ירבו עצבותם אחר, מהרו בל אסיך נזקיהם, מקדם ובל אשאת שמותם על שפתי, אדוני מנת חלקי וחוסי אתה תומך גורלי, חבלים נפלו לי בנעימים, אף נחלת שופר עלי, אברך את אדוני, אשר יעצני אף לילות, יסירוני חיליותי, שיביתי על אדוני לנגדי תמיד, כי ממיני בא לאמוד, לכן שמח ליבי, ויגל כבודי אף בשרי ישכון לבטח, כי לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול, לא תדהן חסידך לראות שחת, תודיעני אורח חיים סובה, שמחות את פניך, נעמוד במנחה נצח. תהילים פרק י"ז. תפילה לדוד שמע אדוני צדק, הקשיבה רינתי, האזינה תפילתי ולא שפתי מרמה, מלפניך משפטי יצא, עיניך תחזינה מישרים, בחנת ליבי, פקדת לילה צרפתני, בל תמצא זמותי בל יעבור פי, לפעולות אדם בדבר שפתך אני שמרתי ארחות פריץ, תמוך אשורי במרגלותיך בל נמותו פעמי, אני קראתי איך כי תנני, אל הט אוזנך לי שמע אמרתי, הפלא חסדך מושיע חוסים, מי מתקוממים בימינך, שומרני כלשון בת עין, פצע כנפך תסתירני, מפני רשעים זו שדוני, אויבי בנפש יקיפו עליי, חיל במו סגרו פימו דברו בגאות, אשורנו אתה אסבבונו עיניהם, ישוטו לנטות בארץ, דמיונו כאריה יחשוף לצ'וף, תכפיר יושב במסתרים, קום אדוני קדמה פניו, אחריהו פלטה נפשי, והשחר באחד, מי מתים ידך אדוני, מי מתים בחלד, חלקם בחיים וצפונך תמלא, ויתנם יספו בנים והניחו יתרם כלל אליהם, אני בצדק אחזה פניך, אסבעה בהקיץ תמונתך. תהילים פרק עין ב'. So let's skip to תהילים צדי א'. יושב בצאת היום בצל שדי יתלונן, אומר לאדוני מחסי ובצדדי אלוהי אפתח בו, כי הוא יציל לך מפח יכוש, מדבר הבבות בעברתו יסח לך ותחת כנפיו צחצח, צינה וסוחרה אמיתו, לא תירא מפח הלילה מחית יוף יומם, מדבר באופו ילוך מקטע בשתוריים, מפול מצדך אלף ורבע מנך אליך לא ייגש, רק פניך תביט ושלמת רשעים תראה, כי אתה אדוני מחצי עליון שמת מעונך, לא תונה אליך רע ונגע לא יקרב בעודך, כי מלאכה ויסבתך לשמורך בכל דרכיך, על כפיים יישונך בניגוד ואבן רגלך על שכב ודן, תדרוך תמור כתיב ותנין, כי בי חשק והפעלתהו אסגבהו כי ידע שמי יקראני ועיניהו עמו אנוכי וצרה, אכלצהו ואכבדהו, ורחם יספהו והרי בשועתי, רחם יספהו והרי בשועתי. תהילים פרק ק"ד. וברכי נפשי את אדוני, אדוני אלוהי גדלת מאוד, הוד גדל לבשת עוד האור כסמן נוטה שמיים כירייה, המקרב המים עליותיו, הסמבים רחובו המלך על כנפי רוח, עושה מלאכת רוחות ומשרתיו יש לו את יסד הארץ המכונע, ואדמות עולם ועת תהום כלבוש כיסיתו על הרים יעמדו מים, מן גערתך ינוסו מן כל רמך יחפזון, יעלו הרים ירדו וגאות, במקום זה יסדת להם, גבול שמת בה יעבורון בה ישובון לכסות הארץ, המשלח מעיינים בנחלים בין הרים יהלכו, ישקו כל חייתו שדה יסברו פרעים צמאם, עליהם עוף השמיים משכון מבין אפויים, ייתנו כל משקה הרים עליותיו מפרי המסכת יספה הארץ, מצמיח חצי לבהמה ועשב לעבודת האדם, תלחם מן הארץ ויין שמח לבב אנוש, להציל פנים משמן ולחם לבב אנוש יסעד, יספו עצי אדוני ארזי לבנון אשר נתן, אשר שם ציפורים מקננו חסידה, בראשים ביתה הרים הגבוהים מי אלים, צלים מחסה לשפנים, עשה ירח למועדים שמש ידם מבואו, תשת חושך ולילה בו תרמוס כל חייתו יער, הכתבים שואגים לטרף ולבקש מאל אוכלם, תזרח השמש יאספון ואל מעונתם ירבצון, יצא אדם לפעלו ולעבודתו עד הערב, מה רבו מסך אדוני כולם בחוכמה עשיתה, מעלה הארץ כננך זה הים הגדול רוכב ידיים שם רמס ונספר חיות קטנות עם גדולות שם מריות יהלכון לבטן זה יצרת לשחק בו כולם אליך יסבר נתת אוכלם ביתו תיתן להם ילקוטון תיתח ידך יספון טוב תסתיר פניך יבהלון תוסף רוחם יגבעון ואל אפרם ישבון תשלח רוחך יבהרון ותחדש פני אדמה יכבוד אדוני דלם ישמח אדוני במעשיו להביט לארץ ותרעד ייגע בהרים ויעשנו אשר אדוני בחיי אז אמרה אלוהי ביודי ירב עליו שיחי אנוכי אשמח באדוני יתמו חטאים מן הארץ ראשים עודנם ברכי נפשי עד אדוני הללויה. Final פרק תהילים פרק קל"ב. שיר המעלות ממעמקים קראתיך אדוני אדוני שמע בקולי תענה אוזניך קשוב לדקות אדוני אם עוונות תשמע אדוני מי יעמוד כי עמך סליחה למען תברא קיוויתי אדוני קיווית נפשי ולדבר אכלתי נפשי לאדוני משומרים לבוקר יחל ישראל אדוני כי אם אדוני החסד והרבה מופדות והוא יפתה את ישראל מכל עוונותיו. We're going to recite different parts of Tehillim Parak Kuf Yutet. Kuf Yutet has all the letters of the alphabet, so we're going to recite the Tehillim according to Nachadebra, Netty's Hebrew name. So we'll start with Od Nun. David, do you want to start with Od Nun?
השבעתי בקיימה לשמור משפטי צדקך. חז נעניתי עד מאוד, אדוני חייני כדבריך. כך נדבות פי רצנה אדוני משפטיך למדני. נפשי בכפי תמיד, ותורתך לא שכחתי. כי נתנו רשעים פח לי, נקודתך לא טעיתי. כי נחלתי את כתותיך לעולם כי ששון ליבי המה. כי נטיתי ליבי לעשות חוקיך לעולם עקב.
We're just pointing out the numbers of the psukim are in the
yes.
Yeah, so it's confusing, but just skip over the psukim. Okay, Tamar, would you like to recite?
Uncle Kenny, go ahead. Repeat. It's the puzzle, yes.
עשיך והביט ברחתך, וחוקותיך אשתעשע, לא אשכח דבריך.
ראי בחוצני, כי תורתך לא שכחתי. ריבה ריבי, וגאלני בברכה חייני. פני רחוק ומרשעים ישועה, כי חוקיך לא דרשתי. רחמך רבים, אדוני במשפטיך חייני.
Is there a speaker? Do you want to ask your brothers to do it?
אשר יקצה לא שמע. ואין כי בעודך אהבתי. אדוני תחסדך חייני. ובוש ברכה מת לעולם כל משפט צדקך.
ושמירנה בכל לב, הדריכני בנתיב מצוותיך כי בו חפצתי, הט ליבי אל עדותיך ואל על בצע, העבר עיניי מראות שווא בדרכיך חיים, הקם לעבדך אמרתך אשר לירתך, העבר חרפתי אשר יגורתי כי משפטיך תוביל, הנה התאהבתי לפיקודיך בצדקתך חיינו.
Share an opportunity for family members to share some reflections and thoughts. I do want to start with the Dvar Torah. I never had the opportunity to meet Netty. but I've had the opportunity and privilege to hear stories about her from Tamar and David, a little bit from Ken. I remember the Shiva as well. But I decided that leading up to the Shloshim, it's not Shloshim, leading up to the Azkara, that I wanted to get to know her a little better, and so I actually looked for some of her writings online, and there are plenty. It's voluminous. She wrote extensively, and many different newspapers and magazines. And I found an article that she wrote in the foreword a few years ago, and I really enjoyed reading it. And I want to share with you some of the qualities that I just drew out, that I feel I learned about Netty, Zichronah Livracha, just from reading this article, and it connects a little bit to the Parshat HaShavua. The article is about a book by Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel decided to write a portrait about Rashi. And the whole purpose of this article is trying to figure out, why did Elie Wiesel decide to write a book about Rashi? So number one is you see the humor. You see the wit. So Elie Wiesel explains, he says, I wrote this book because it's not because he is a descendant of the 15th century scholar believed to be related to Rashi. And then Netty adds in parentheses, this must be an East European obsession, because my Polish-born grandmother made the same claim, that she was also related to Rashi. You see the humor, the wit, the warmth. The next thing that I found very interesting was...
He wasn't joking about it.
Yeah. There's an element of, and I'm saying this in a positive sense, an element of chutzpah, of gutsiness. I mean, Elie Wiesel. No one's allowed to touch Elie Wiesel. You're not allowed to critique Elie Wiesel. He's above. And yet in this article, in a very gentle but direct way, she leans into critiquing Elie Wiesel. She says, the book follows Wiesel's meandering, sometimes narcissistic ruminations on Rashi and his world. Why write this? Is Wiesel becoming an Orthodox rabbi? Wiesel admits he's getting sentimental, perhaps reconnecting with the lost world of his cheder-filled childhood. Maybe it's a paper tome for his Orthodox parents. Maybe he identifies with Rashi, who managed to create a library of writings amid a life marred by hardship and bloodshed. Or maybe Wiesel was just following series guidelines. And this gutsiness, this chutzpah, a little bit of ezut panim, but in a positive sense. This is a quality which, interestingly enough, is displayed by Avraham in this parasha. Avraham stands up before HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says, "Hashofet kol haaretz lo yaseh mishpat." Chalila lach, Hashem, how can you do this? To be a Jew means to push back. It means to push the boundaries, to question, to grapple with, to struggle, sometimes to even be a little bit brazen and gutsy, to have a little bit of chutzpah. Chutzpah coming from a place of emunah. Chutzpah coming from a place of love and warmth, but also a gentle critique. And Netty, from what I learned from the stories and also reading about her, she was someone who was gutsy in her journalism, sharing stories about people whose stories weren't being told, searching out the things that people needed to read about that may not have been your typical political article. And in this sense, she displayed the chutzpah of Avraham Avinu, and Elie Wiesel actually in his own writings, and also in her critique of Elie Wiesel. But the critique and the gutsiness is complemented by her warmth. And in the end, she has... You feel her connection to Elie Wiesel. She says, one thing I do share with Wiesel, ever since yeshiva days when I struggled to decipher his strange, discursive script of Rashi, I wondered at the enormity of Rashi's work. In a challenging time, no less, I still don't know how he did it. Wiesel doesn't provide the answer, but even if he cannot shed much light on Rashi, he does convey a renewed sense of amazement at his accomplishments. So she's able to see the positive sides of the work and of Wiesel's work. And in this warmth, you see her humanity. You see her kindness, her sympathy, her love for people, her curiosity. And there's one final thing that I learned from this article about her, and the other articles that I read, is her deep, deep connection to Yiddishkeit. Her connection to the shtetl, to Yiddish, to our heritage, to the kishkas of Judaism. You could see the connection, the love, the affection, just such a deep, deep connection. These are her people. Am Yisrael are her people, and Judaism is her way. And I just saw that in everything that she wrote. She wrote a long piece about Natan Sharansky. From what I understand, it's her neighbor for a long time. And you see her pulling out these incredible stories and sharing insights and the depth and the connection. And these are some of the things that I had the opportunity to learn about Nettie. And please God, her family, her loved ones, everyone gathered here should continue her legacy of her both having a little bit of that religious chutzpah, but that warmth, the humanity, the wit, the love, and the deep, deep connection to Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, and Torah Yisrael. So I want to ask Ayala, are you going to speak first, or Ken? What's the?
I was also going to ask that someone read and translate.
Yeah, I'll
do that. I'm really going to be very, very short. Thank you for coming. Marcy said to me this morning, "What are you going to say?" And I wasn't 100% sure. And she shared a thought with me, like last week's parsha, Lech Lecha Me'artzecha. Nettie came here. Life was challenging and difficult, but she made a name for herself here in Israel. This week's parsha is Vayera, and we learn from our forefather Abraham what Hachnasat Orchim is all about. And I know my Hebrew isn't perfect, but somewhere in here is a comment about how she took in everybody. If you were a guest in her home, she just wanted to make sure that you felt comfortable, that you ate well, that she was taking care, and if you were sick, she would take care of you. She took care of everyone's needs, everyone who came to her house. I should also compliment Tamar for just leading this whole effort, and I'm sure David was somewhere in the mix as well. But it's not an easy thing to do. And of course, Ayala, who, when the draft of this came out, Ayala translated it for me because I didn't understand exactly. There's a lot of meaning in here. And when she read it to me, she said, "Uvilti nishkachat," and I said, "How would you translate that?" And she told me, "Unforgettable, unforgettable." So I told Marcy this morning that there's a famous song, Unforgettable, for those of you who know, that famous song from Nat King Cole. And I looked at it and I just wanted to read a few lines. Unforgettable, that's what you are. Unforgettable through near or far. Unforgettable in every way, and forevermore, that's how you'll stay. I think we should remember that.
Thank you, Rabbi, first of all. Thank you all for coming. And thank you, Penny. Almost a year ago, I stood here in a moment of shock as we said goodbye to you, Mom. It was by far the worst thing I ever experienced. Now, a year later, I find myself here again. horrifying feeling is not with me, but the sadness that I feel is so strong. I miss you, Mom, every day. I miss you when I wake up in the morning, and it accompanies me throughout the day. Sometimes it's almost like a physical thing. I feel I forgot to do something. And sometimes it's a deep sadness that I've grown accustomed to, and I don't really realize that I'm feeling until somebody asks me, "What's wrong?" And I never know how to respond. How do you explain the world doesn't seem right? That everything is off balance or slightly less clear? But I want to tell you, Mom, that you are remembered. You are remembered in my home, in the collection of photographs that continue to give you your spot. You are remembered in the game that we created when we say, "What would Gran say?" You are remembered by your wonderful Nettyisms that I repeat and always say in your name. Like everyone is fighting, and you say, "It will end in tears." And when you say, when we watch a movie, everyone dies in the end. And when I watch Ilana craft one of her stories, and I think perhaps she has a bit of your gift. You are remembered through your fabulous collection of stories, like The Purple Sweater or Merfogel. And sometimes in a heartbreaking moment, I'm reminded of you so strongly, and I have to really teach myself not to turn away from those moments. Part of the complexity is discovering some of the things that you wrote and the notes and the letters. There was so much we didn't get to speak about. It's hard to internalize that we won't. I find myself reaching out to Kenny and Michelle and other family members, craving those attention and memories because they hold parts of you. I miss your wisdom. I miss your guidance. I miss talking to you about the things that we would have been obsessed about that nobody else would have cared about. We would have dissected Queen Elizabeth's funeral together, you and I. We would have gone over every detail. I miss the way you always knew what was going on with me, and I didn't have to explain. I miss the greenness of your eyes and the freckles you had everywhere. And I miss the way whatever get-ups you had on, you would just pull it off. The difficulty and pain of the last weeks in your life are still with me, but I know that they will fade and they will be replaced of the images of the vibrant, fantastic you. I don't know that we have figured out your work and your legacy. It means something different, a bit different to each of us. But I know we are determined to remember you in a specific and relevant way. And Tamara will speak a bit about the Matzeva, but working on it together set us up for success. I want to thank you for leading us through it with so much sensitivity and in such a masterful way. I'm not sure we would have gotten it done. I'm sad not to have Abby and Danny here. I know their hearts are here. And I'm thankful that we have your incredible body of work, Mom, to keep us company and to learn your values through it. So for now, know that I love you and I carry you with me. Your neshama should have an aliyah, and you should be remembered only for good.
I'm going to speak about the Matzeva. I'm just going to say also a few words to my mother. Mom, I thought a lot about the different periods of your life throughout this year, because during your life you were able, even though it was difficult, and difficult for different reasons each time, to rise up to the hardships and the challenges you faced and bring your creative spirit to the foreground. I think about your relationship with your family, the way you would grab on to any opportunity to host family members that arrived in Israel. Of course, a visit from Grandma and Grandpa would be a moment of incredible preparation and excitement, but also more distant relatives like Charlie Dimson, Alav Shalom, would be momentous, involving an elaborate meal, endless stories, and a rare sense of connection. In my head, I hear the clacking of your high heels on the floor of Beit Eshel, walking around, getting everything ready, and hosting. Because hosting was an art for you. You were able to give everyone a feeling that they were honored, important guests. You offered whatever they needed, maybe a great story, maybe a piece of advice, maybe an introduction, and you became a magnet for family, for your friends, and for my friends. Sometimes on a Shabbat, when I was too tired to talk to a friend that had come to visit me, you would entertain them instead of me. And I love this feeling that I had somebody by my side who would do that connection work. You really loved us and your family and friends, and we had a tremendous place in your heart and ours. Speaking of Shabbat, I think about our Shabbat afternoons, playing Old Maid. You would pick up the cards so that the opponent would think that the card extended would be the one they needed. And then you would either tightly grab onto that card so that I couldn't get it out of your fingers, or let us take it only to find out that in fact the card we needed was way off on the other side in the pile and we had taken the Old Maid. And when holding that card up, the trick had ended, you would bat your eyes and puff out your cheeks and then relax your face, and we would all burst out laughing. And this would go on for hours, these simple card games that turned into moments of pure pleasure. I've tried hard to follow this game, but I've come nowhere to your success with it. You created so much interest and engagement. There was just no other world outside. I think a lot about your dating advice. I replay your words in my head. I revisit the way you would look at me when I would share a story. You were honest with me about your feelings and your thoughts, and you would introduce topics that I thought were forbidden. You had an understanding about the future, a certain nevuah of what a relationship would look like, of how many children I would have. And I think about how you balanced this act. You kept the conversations very raw, but you also found a way to crack a joke and push us out of a comfort zone. It has been a horror this year, navigating the world without your force, your spirit, but I hold you close. You are with me every day, Mom, and I hope I can continue to transmit and echo something of your incredible superpowers, your connectivity, your ability to make people feel worthy and important in your presence, and the importance of speaking about what is unspeakable with your children. About the Matzeva, which we really all wrote together, and I think is a tribute to our mother, how beautifully we were able to come together and identify the themes that we felt were most important. And I also want to thank my uncle and my Aunt Michelle for their feedback and comments along the way. It meant so much to us. We wrote it as an acrostic following the name that she was known by, which is Netty, Nun Tetya. That's how we all knew her. So this speaks about my mother's incredible ability to help others that my uncle also mentioned. But time and again during the Shiva, I heard a story about my mother who not only offered deep insight or a listening ear, which is katef tomechet, kind of a supporting shoulder, but would also make changes, desired changes in their lives. In one story, she was able to make a shidduch. In another, she helped a colleague set up a whole network of connections in Israel, even though she herself was an Olah Chadashah. In another, when a relative came to Israel and wasn't well, she herself took them to the doctor and attended to their needs. So, Hoshatat Yad Rechava Lakol, she stepped across the boundary of words and took action in the real world. Ahavata atfa v'chibra otanu k'mishpacha. I think we all touched on this theme. Her love enveloped and connected us as a family. She really taught us how to leave our rooms, leave our individual spaces, and come together. tova labriot. She was good to people. כעיתונאית נתנה קול לאיש הפשוט לצד מנהיגי עולם. My mother, in her work as a journalist, gave voice to her interviewees. She was, as her beloved friend Fern said so nicely, the master of the reframe. And she did this for both world leaders, Manhigei Olam, like Bill Clinton, as well as for everyday people, like the stories she wrote about our friends who made Aliyah, Ha'ish HaPashut. הפכה סוגיות מושתקות לשיחת היום. She moved the unspeakable, the taboo, into the realm of everyday conversation. My mother took on issues like the Claim Conference, like the issue of Agunot, and repeatedly wrote about them. She wrote hundreds of articles throughout her career. Together with my mother-in-law, we accessed over 200 articles. She explored and captured Israeli society even though she herself was new to this society, and she wisely managed to navigate this insider-outsider view to ask questions that were original. So for example, with the Agunot, she once decided to explore why this was not an issue that secular liberal women were taking on. And I remember her telling me that she was going to Mitu and other such organizations to find out. She offered such original angles and illuminated these issues with strength and determination. Finally, with the Yud, יצירתית, עשירה בתובנות, מלאת חן ומרץ, מסורה למשפחתה ובלתי נשכחת. My mother was so creative. My grandmother, Alaa Shalom, always used to tell me how creative my mother was as a child, and how in my grandparents' house she had a room filled with dolls, and how she brought them to life. I see my mother's artwork in my mind's eye, but she was creative in any situation. Anything uncomfortable could immediately be exploited for a joke. She was charming and energetic. Chen v'meret. Over the Shiva, I repeatedly heard from people that when they got invited to a simcha and she was there and they were seated at a completely different table than her, they would gravitate to wherever she was. And that only in her presence, they found they would quickly be laughing about what was really going on. The food, the lighting. This was true of my mother. Even when she was not well, people would gravitate to her presence, to her charm, to her grace. Ashira b'tovanot, she was the most insightful person on human nature. She was spot on, and it would always be, as my sister said, incredibly joyous to post-mortem, as she would call it, a situation with her, a lunch we had just been to. Even if I wasn't part of the conversation, it was fascinating to listen to her pick it apart. Mesura l'mishpachta, devoted to her family. I think also a lot about this lesson. She had a full-time job. She faced everyday pressures to meet deadlines, come up with ideas, find resources. But Shabbat was Shabbat. And PTA meetings were always PTA meetings. She would go and she would come back with stories and jokes. Once a teacher of mine complained to her that I was mefatpetet, talking in class. And she came home and just repeated this word to me again and again. Mefatpetet, mefatpetet. And then she finally said, I think it's great that you're mefatpetet. And Mom, you were unforgettable. She opened up her heart, her mind, her wit to others. She gave hope and comfort. My brother Avi actually chose the pasuk, which is written over here. Noten vaya'ef koach le'en onim otzma yarbe, and he chose the pasuk from Yeshayahu, which my grandfather knew by heart.
It's her name, not Nun. It starts with Nun.
And it also starts with Nun. I want to just thank you all so much for coming. You were all so dear to my mother. You meant so much to her. And you were all with her throughout her life and throughout these different moments. You didn't let go, and she didn't let go of any of you. And may her neshama have it.
Amen. We're now going to recite Kaddish and then Kavalei Rachamim. So, yeah. I have to.
Regular time?
I have. You can join us. Stand.
You can join.
This is short.
I know. Okay. Wait, we have all right, I can tell you. What? All right. Turn around. Yeah? All right. Stay there. Yizkadal v'yizkadat b'nei Rachel.
Amen.
Amar d'Baruch Yisrael
Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabban Baruch Le'olam
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר וישמע ויתנשא יתגר ויתעלה ויתחדש שמיר ותקודשה בריחו נעלם מכל גחתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונתנתה תענינה תענה וימדו אמן יהי שתם הרבה משמיים וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימדו אמן עשה שלום ומאמן ויעשה שלום ועל כל ישראל
Recite Kavalei Rachamim. I'm going to have Ida. מלא רחמים שוכן ועמלונים המסי מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר כי המזהירים את נשמת נחת דברה בת ישראל ואביגיל שלחה לעולמה בעבור שאנו מתפללים ועד הזכר נשמתה בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה לכן בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצור חיים מנשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום המשכבה ונאמר אמן. תהי נשמת נחת דברה בת ישראל ואביגיל tzura b'tzura chaim. Thank you everybody for coming. We're going to daven mincha now.
If people want to stay,
We can also say that. Okay, shalom and yan. Thank you. Sure. Thank you.